Now joining us to discuss this very issue is Wierenga, lecturer in international affairs from the Baltic Defence College. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So now, first and foremost, we heard during our news bulletin that prime ministers of the Baltic states state unanimously that investments are not needed in 2 years or in 5 years, but they're needed now. So considering the need for military infrastructure, what challenges do Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania face in terms of construction and development, to your mind?
Well, that's a really good question because this comes at quite a vital time. You've heard the news about Sergei Shoigu being sacked and being replaced by Mr. Belousov, an economist. So it is clear that this is going to be a race for capability development between NATO countries and the Russian Federation. And of course, the Baltic states, together with Poland, make up a large chunk of the eastern flank of the alliance. So this is arguably one of the most pressing issues that is going to be faced. Now, we have the three prime ministers of the Baltic states, all exceptional prime ministers, all people who take security very seriously, and they have demonstrated time and time again that they're willing to work day in and day out to ensure the stability and security of their countries. And we also have very good news in Lithuania from the Americans, contributing more troops that are going to stay indefinitely instead of till 2025. The Canadians have indicated, the framework nation for the EFP in Latvia, that they're going to do the same. They're going to send more troops, they're going to stay for longer, and the infrastructure developments are currently being undertaken in Latvia. Estonia as well is planning to build new infrastructure. So building new bases, I would say probably the biggest challenge would be what happens when the brigade level is complete for the entirety of the deployment for the framework nations. Then you have infrastructure development that is going to need to be expanded because then you have to take into question families, longer term stays. So I think it's money and urgency, but because of the leadership of the three Baltic states and because they are lockstep on this issue, I don't anticipate too many problems because it's really not a hard sell to get citizens of these countries to pay more for defense.
Right, well, I mean, absolutely, and that certainly seems to be working very well. Things are moving, the influence in NATO and the EU is obvious. What about the armies of the countries themselves? How are they developing? How are they growing? Are the policies, for example, in terms of conscription, changing?
Well, they have. I mean, the Latvians recently voted just slightly over a year ago to reinstate conscription for males. And the first year of that, they didn't have to pick up the phone or send an email because those positions were filled. People from various different backgrounds, from academics to, just youngsters were just lining up to serve their country in conscription. That is anticipated to stay, but what I think the Latvians did quite successfully is they decided to introduce this notion of patriotic education, which is part of a similar concept that all of the Baltic states, also Finland, one of the newest alliance members, have in this comprehensive approach because of where they're situated and because of the horrible and deplorable behavior of their neighbor. They understand security in a very unique way. And so this type of education has started from the very lowest levels in schools, and that's supposed to be introduced. And of course, the issue with Estonia is they've always had conscription for males, and they take that very seriously. And it's something that people have a common sense of pride in. I mean, we just had last month, it's a celebration of the military, and the slogan is "Annamajau," like let's honor. So it's very much something that you see front and center in the public. And so people have, even before 2022, when the Russians started the second phase of their unjust and despicable war against the Ukrainian people, this was taken very seriously. I arrived in the Baltic states in 2015, so it was just about a year after the Crimean Peninsula was illegally annexed, and it's something that I have seen collectively amongst the three Baltic states for quite some time.
And you observing the situation for, like you mentioned, quite some time. There is also yet another perhaps issue to be addressed, that is now the Russian minority within these 3 states. So how do now the Baltic states go around this so-called issue? How to, as the Russians now within these states are quite vulnerable now to Russian propaganda. So how do you operate this so that now they would feel a part of the country more than now affiliated with now a Russian state or with Moscow? As we do know that there were some instances now in Estonia or in Latvia that the majority of websites were now erasing Russian language from the websites. Estonian is quite hard to learn. How do we navigate this?
Well, I think that there's 2 points to be made. I would say that with the younger generations, and this is not broad sweeping and it does not include everybody in a specific generation if they come from a Russian-speaking household, but I think that the key way to make a differentiate between is actually headspace and information space. Where is their information coming from? Because there are young people who grow up speaking Russian at home that feel Latvian or Estonian inside. They speak the language. Some of them go to the military and they're patriotic, and you see this very clearly. And I think one of the pitfalls that people outside of the Baltic states face when they study this issue inside the Baltic states, whether they be think tankers or political scientists, is putting the Russian-speaking population into one box, because that's not the case. I mean, there are different regions and there are different percentages of Russian speakers, Latvia having the most, Lithuania having the least. And I think that language and information space are the 2 key things. You are correct, Estonian is a beautiful but fairly tricky language to learn. I can attest to that. But, you know, winning the sort of school children over at first and starting to demonstrate from the beginning that we are an EU country, living in the European Union is a good thing and here's why, living in Estonia is a good thing and here's why, and then, you know, painting a picture from the early stages. NATO is not what some people make it out to be further east of the border. It is actually an alliance that stands for peace and prosperity. So there's a lot of awareness that's being raised. And I myself am part of an Estonian NGO called Eesti NATO Ühing, which is the Estonian Atlantic Treaty Association, which raises awareness inside of Estonia about all of the good and positive things that NATO does. No. So there are several different NGOs and just citizen civic activist groups that are on top of this as well. So.
Right. Well, fascinating, and we would love to continue this conversation, Mr. Wierenga. Thank you very much for coming in.
It's my pleasure.
And sharing your insights with our audience.
Always great to be with TVP World. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.